Hey, folks, this is Rudy, your host of the BadAzz Fantasy Baseball Podcast. We're having a special edition today, and it's titled Backdrafting. We're going to talk about backdrafting, what it is a little bit, and then we're going to get into it and get you ready for your drafts this year because we've got 18 days before OFD. And OFD is opening fucking day. Say it again, OFD, OFD. 18 days to OFD. But look, we're going to hit this fast and furious and get through this and do a little practical exercise and show you some examples of what we're talking about. So basically, what I've done for the past several years when I'm drafting is I pretty much, as far as how I've focused using my list, either my player ranking list, draft player ranking list, or later when I play in fantasy baseball, start developing tiers list. And now I use tiers every time I go into a draft. So if you watch the BadAzz sessions that are those learning blocks that I posted on our website at www.badazzsports.com. BadAzz is always spelled with two Z's. So it's www.badazzs, two Z's, badazzsports.com. Badazzsports.com. Go there and you can find there are 4 learning blocks that are posted in there already. And you can link up and see the presentation slides at our website. You can check out a video version of them on YouTube, and you can check out the audio versions on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Sexy. Anyway, backdrafting. Okay, what are we talking about? So, far too often, I just felt like when I went into drafts, I felt like I was ready. But if I ever had any problems or hiccups at all, it would tend to happen towards the middle to later rounds. And really, I just thought, I just need to give it more time and perspective. So this is why I came up with a concept to give special emphasis on the back end of a draft. It's the new concept I call backdrafting. Again, it's not rocket scientist stuff. It's not Einstein worthy or anything. But I do think, honestly, if you apply it, you will improve your drafting. In the world of reality, though, backdraft is an abrupt burning of gases in a fire. And that's when oxygen is rapidly delivered to that fire. And when it's in a depleted oxygen depleted environment, that sudden rush of oxygen can be quite explosive. And as you can imagine, it's a huge danger to firefighters, of course. But like, for example, if a burning room and you were on the outside of it and you busted a window open or opened a door or whatever, that sudden rush of oxygen could really manifest into a large fire. But that's what a backdraft really is. And so similarly to this is what we're going to do in fantasy baseball. I mean, in a sense, is create a backdraft. We're going to provide some oxygen to our draft prep and help turn your oxygen-depleted draft boards into badass strategies that set the league on fire. Fire! Shh. We're going to set it on fire. So, that's where I come up with the name. And no, I didn't come up with the name from the 1991 Kurt Russell movie, Backdraft. I haven't even seen that movie. Let me know if it's any good, if you liked it. But I'm making a conscious effort in backdrafting to strengthen my drafting performance in the back half of my drafts. So again, this whole thing we're going to talk about in backdrafting is focused solely on improving your drafting in the back half of your drafts. If you've already got some experience with playing in fantasy baseball before, or this year it's your first year and you've already started mock drafting, such, think about this. And I don't know if it happens to you, but I think with several fantasy players out there, I would venture to say there's quite a few that do this. You go into a mock drafting queue and you wait, and you go into do your mock draft, and you get started and you get a few rounds, 4, 5, 6, 7 rounds into it or whatever. And maybe some of it doesn't work the way you kind of wanted it to go, or it's just kind of slow going, it's kind of boring, and you're getting into these middle rounds, whatever. And you just stop. You either back out of that draft, that mock draft, or you just throw it on auto draft and just kind of take your mind off of it. And if that's you, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I just think that's just natural. It happens a lot. So what we end up doing is going back and continually working that top half of your draft, but not implementing any draft strategies that may help you in the back half. And I will also contend that not only when you help the back end of your drafting, you're more prepared from the back, it's also going to help your entire draft, because you're going to just be more apt, more fluid, and be able to be more flexible to move in and out of each tier, or each draft around, each round that you draft in, and be more confident in what decisions should be made at those points. So we're doing a bottom-up approach, and that's how we're going to do it. We're going to focus on the back half of the draft, but ultimately, again, it's going to help your strategy all the way across the board, I believe. The result of backdrafting should not be to identify players in later rounds that you want to target for your drafts and create. Again, let me back it up. The result of backdrafting should be to identify players in later rounds that you want to target for your draft and create positional red lines and flags. Positional red lines and flags. So we have backdrafting as an overall, just a concept, an idea to further your draft, to improve your draft performance. So, but the intent is to identify players in the later rounds that you want to target and put on your roster and create red lines, positional red lines, and we'll talk about this and I'll show you in a minute, and flags. Now, the positional red lines are simply identifying and capturing in your draft board the last player in each position that you are targeting. Again, red lines, positional red lines, are simply identifying and capturing on your draft board the last player in each position that you're targeting. Flags. Flags identify players in each roster position that you would like to draft that come just before the red lines, those positional red lines. This serves to warn you that you are approaching your red line for a particular position. And in my opinion, these activities should help you with in-draft decision making. That's my intent with it, is make it a little, but still you own it. You're owning your draft. I don't have a beef with a lot of the podcast folks out there. Again, I think they're so knowledgeable and they have great opinions, and I listen to them, and it helps make me a better player. But I will also tell you, there is a lot of chatter out there about how to approach your drafts in ways that I don't agree with. I mean, it's not that I don't agree with. I cannot believe people play like this. They use, and we've talked about this in the BadAzz session. So if you go back, I would recommend you, even if you haven't seen this, is to pause this and go back to BadAzz sessions number 3, where we talk about draft preparation, and then we do a practical exercise. And so if you haven't built a tiers list, or you haven't done any of this prior planning to get to this backdrafting idea, I think this is a general concept that can be applied to any player ranking system or any tiers list that you develop. But I think if you're fairly new to fantasy baseball, I highly recommend go back to those BadAzz sessions on our website and look at that draft preparation one and go through that and go through the practical exercise. That will get you to a point where you take a power ranking system somewhere, a draft player ranking system, and you select that as your base power ranking, or your base draft ranking system to start with. And then you include your factors, or what I call other factors that you feel important, that help achieve the goals that you want from your team. And i.e., it can be solely about performance, but it can also be some of the human elements and factors and things that we had talked about. So go back to that session if you want to learn more about that, is how to develop those factors. So once you develop your factors, place them in this base power ranking system. I like to call folks like that develop that, like fantasy pros. I'm always going to call them out because they provide a awesome, what I recommend is a great base power rankings startup to set that up and download it and be ready, and then manipulate that data, move people up and down your tiers when you build your tiers list based on your factors that nudge them up or down, that are important to you. And I contend that just builds a team that's more in your light, versus, I'm not against this, but versus going in and dumping your draft picks or potential draft picks into some kind of aggregator or some kind of formulator or wizard extraordinary or whatever. It's very confusing, and I think it takes you away from your GM role, your general manager role, making key decisions that make you own that team. And you have factors in there that you decided were important. So you develop a team that in your eyes is going to be competitive, because you can do it. You don't need all these computerized systems and things to make you play better. And who the hell wants to do that anyway? That kind of sounds like Milli Vanilli, those dudes that got those awards for singing. I think they got a Grammy or something back in the 90s, and they weren't even singing the damn song. They were a bunch of phonies. I mean, I'm not saying you're a phony if you use those kind of systems. I would say if you're trying to have fun doing this, consider highly not doing that and just using these simple, basic techniques. I said in the BadAzz sessions, you can write these damn things down and utilize them on a pad of paper, a phone, an iPad, another type of tablet, a PC, a Mac, anywhere. These are just general ideas and systems that help you become a better player without all the extravagance and craziness that's out there that tell you can't do it alone, or you can't do it with your input. You got to throw it into some robot that has an algorithm that's going to tell you what to do. Hey, man, we're Americans, man. I fought in the Army for 21 years, and, man, I'm going to make decisions. I know baseball. You know baseball. So let's be badasses together, and let's do some backdrafting. So what I'm going to tell you how I'm going to do this is, let me switch this screen here real quick. Oops, wrong screen. If I've said it once, I've said it 100 damn times. I am not a broadcast, I'm not a broadcast production, broadcast journalist, audio engineer or any of that shit. I do the best I can with this stuff, but I think I'm getting better at it. So bear with me here on this. We're gonna shut this screen off. Goodbye. And we're gonna bring all this up. Okay, folks. Okay, this is a screen at some tiers list that I don't know. It was a while. It was a little bit ago, and a little bit ago could be just 3 or 4 days ago. Because right now, again, we have 18 days before at the time of videotaping and doing this session. 18 days away, so we're really getting into a time area where we need to get in them mock drafts and really solidify our draft boards, our tiers list, whatever you use, player ranking. Okay, so backdrafting is really just getting your focus in another place besides the top of the draft always. And instead of starting at the top with all your thoughts and plans, this is just shifting it in the opposite direction. So this is a tiers list of mine. Let's see why that just went off the screen here. Hold on. Sorry about that. Come on, rock and roll. Oh, there it is. Okay, now we're ready. Rock and roll. Okay, so there's other categories up here in the header. If you go back to the BadAzz sessions that are on our website or on all our social, go back there and look at that, and this will all make complete sense. Matter of fact, you can have your tiers list already started or whatever, come back and watch this, and then apply backdrafting to some of your draft strategy and planning. So so I'm going to use the example, as I always do, of a 12-team standard league. So in a 12-team standard league, and typically I'm talking about Yahoo, but it applies to others like CBS, ESPN, what have you. So this standard league, the standard league Yahoo has a 12-team standard categories league, 5x5 categories, is 23 roster slots. So you have to draft and fill 23 roster slots. And that's simply how I come up with it. My tiers list, I do it by the number of draft positions and developed by the number of roster spots in the draft rounds that we're going to have. So in this case, we're going to draft 23 rounds in a 12-team league. So I build the tiers list under that idea, and we'll start at 23. After doing a lot of work and again, using the base power rankings I personally use from fantasypros.com, downloaded that, and then moved around players based on other factors I've listed up here. But anyway, using backdrafting is not looking at those considerations. It's looking at the people who you're targeting or you're thinking about targeting, and trying to look at from the last round up. You're not looking at every single position, but because you're not looking at utility. There's 2 utility roster spots to fill. And in my case, I'm going to start the year carrying 3 players on the bench, hitters. So I've got 5 hitters out there that are kind of like free agent or free territory, on positions. This is simply focusing on your starting positions. Where are you you're looking for people from the last round up and stopping when you find somebody you say can fill catcher, first base, second base, shortstop, third base, 3 outfield positions, 7 starting pitchers, and 3 relief pitchers. That's my strategy. And again, go back to BadAzz sessions in draft preparation. We talk about this, about roster construction and how do you, how you should consider divvying up that ratio. But we're going to go, for the sake of this and backdrafting, we're going to start looking at rounds, again, 23 and 22, and we're going to start looking at, and I can tell you we already hit something here, I'm sorry, at 22. Now, at 22, I saw Evan Phillips, and I could see him being on my roster as my 3rd relief pitcher. So what, hold on. We don't have every single example in here. So I'm going to have to go up because I don't have this. Okay. So Evan Phillips, though. Okay, yeah, I can do it. Okay, so Evan Phillips, I can see being my 3rd relief pitcher. So I'm going to do some moving here real quick. So what I would do, or what I would have in my plan here, my tiers list, is I have a red line there. And that's my positional red line for my 3rd relief pitcher. And, I know it's very bold and significant, but it's easy to see when you're fast scrolling during a draft to see that red line's coming up for that position. Again, now that's really late in the draft, and it's not as not as helpful as I'll show you here as we go up the draft a little bit, because I feel like I can get the relief pitcher of last resort for my relief pitcher 3 represents this positional red line. So I'll go up, and what I'm looking for now is the next relief pitcher I have highlighted as somebody I want to target. So we have, and it's going to be a minute, I think, if I remember right. So I'm still scrolling up. where am I at? Okay, and here we are. In round 19, what I did, I found my next relief pitcher that I was targeting, and that'd be Kendall Graveman. So in this backdrafting plan, I've established in round 22 that that's as far as I want to go. I want to get my 3rd relief pitcher by Evan Phillips. He's the red line for that position. I put a red flag up at the next person in that position that I'm targeting, and this flag will indicate during a draft that this is the next to last guy. I'm sure you could come up maybe with other color or ideas where you even have one before that, the next before the next. If you're worried about getting in a pinch and getting shut out on a position or a player, or know when to pull the trigger earlier rounds because you got people down there at later in the draft who you are willing to put in those positions. You can see yourself picking them up. So anyway, so there's the positional red line, and then the flag, the red flag indicating the player in that position that comes before the very last one at the red line in that position, and gives you a little flexibility to make decisions. And we'll scroll up here and find our next position red line, and that would be catcher. In this example, we have Cal Raleigh. So in round 18, at least right now, that's where he's going. Or again, it could be, I don't know, it may be a round or two different now. I'm not sure. But taking this example, my catcher red line, I'm saying I need to get that done by Cal Raleigh. No further down than that. So there's my positional red line to warn me that position I'm going to have to draft a catcher. And now I'm looking for the flag and that would be right here, Sean Murphy in round 14. So I'll get a pretty good warning at 14, and I can make a decision in this case. Do I want to take Sean Murphy here, or do I want to wait until round 18, or maybe bump up to 17 to get Cal Raleigh? Because always when you're waiting till the red line, if you're targeting that red line and you say you want that person on your roster, I think in most cases you need to be prepared and always taking them a tier earlier. Not in all cases, and you may not have to, but I'm saying plan to do that, because if you really pick them and say, hey, at round 18, I like Cal Raleigh as my starting catcher, well, what's really the difference between 17 and 18? So if you're planning to wait till those red lines, again. So okay. Now pitchers, I think at least on this list, it's showing 4 up to SP4. So in a perfect world, if this was finished, we'd have all 7. But let's say from SP4, I've identified the red line. I want to have my SP4 selected by the time Kodai Senga comes up in round 16. That's the area I want to get that SP4. But look at this. The round before, round 16, round 15, I have SP3 red line. So, and below that's the flag for the next round, 14, Brady Singer, warning me the SP4 is coming up. In round 14, ahead of my red line for Grayson Rodriguez at my SP3, I have Chris Sale that I could pick up in the 14th round. So I hope this makes sense to you. But you notice we've been going from the bottom. We haven't looked at we're not even thinking about anything with the top part of the draft yet. We're solely looking at those positions that we can fill, and from the bottom up, who we can see on our everyday roster in a spot like catcher, Cal Raleigh. So I know catcher, I can wait. If my red line's at 18, I know I don't need to focus on catcher for a long time. On the other hand, as I get up here closer and closer, some of these get really tight. My relief pitcher 2 that I want to have, the red line is at Andres Munoz. Okay, but from there it goes way up and it starts going exaggerated. And you see I've got 3 red lines at round 13. Now that's impossible to fix in that round. I can do one. I can meet one of these red lines, put them off. But 2 of these other ones, if I'm going to stay on target with the type of players, the level of players that I want on my team, I'm going to have to look up in this round of 12, which thankfully I don't have anybody highlighted anyway. And then it gets really cluttered in 11. And then it gets a little looser. So it really helps. I think this is indicative too that I'm trying to have a lot of options, but also at the time be more specific and deliberate about who I want from the bottom up, so I know not to focus on that towards the top. So here's a bunch of red lines, and that's going to get real tricky because these are the rounds that are going to be tricky and tough for me to get some of the players that I want. But I know that coming in, and I can prepare for that in earlier rounds than 13, that I know 13's coming up, and when it comes up, I need to already have a dent in that. So when I have a round with not as much going on, like round 10 here, This is a perfect example of a round that I'm going to deliver on one of those positions that's red line and coming up. Meaning I'll probably select somebody a red line here in a round sooner, like Anthony Rizzo. Instead of 11, I may select him at 10 to make sure I get him. And the same with relief pitcher. Was this relief pitcher 2? Yeah. My red flag is at Raisel Iglesias. I'd like to get him. But at the same time, with all this cluttered here, I've got to deal with first base in my eyes. If I hadn't already, when I got here, if I wait and don't deal with first base until the red line, then I'm going to have to make that decision. And I'm, at least in my eyes, under my draft strategy, I'm going to have to make that decision. So we're moving on up, and we see some free space, a little lighter space here, so it's not as colorful, and that's helpful to help resolve some of those conditions where there's a glut, like a traffic jam up there. Don't you hate traffic jams? I'm live in Alvin, Texas, just 30 miles south of Houston, Texas, and I can tell you, when you drive in Houston, Texas, you're going to run into some damn traffic, and man, it's rough. It's a traffic jam. It looks like my round 13 for sure. Okay, so round 9, we got a red line of my outfielder 2. I'd like to fill that by then. In round 8, I have a red line for third base. I want to fill third base by the 8th round. And I want to fill my shortstop here, you can see, by round 7. And my SP1. So I've answered the question. My target for SP1 is no later than the 6th round here, Luis Castillo. So unless I take the flagged position one earlier, like in this case, Alek Manoah, then I'm going to definitely draft my SP1 here and get this done. So that, and same as round 5 is my red line for my relief pitcher 1, because I'm putting a lot of emphasis this year on making sure I get one of 3 relievers that I think are going to be you can count on for 30+ saves. And I'm talking about Edwin Diaz, Emmanuel Clase, and Jordan Romano. Jordan Romano. Is it Romano or Romano? Potato or potato? Fuck, I don't know. But he's a very good reliever. So I would want, in this situation, my strategy is I want one of those 3. To get those, that red line's going to be for relief pitcher at round 5. I'm going to have to take a draft pick, make sure I get a relief pitcher before round 5 or by round 5. And the same token, my SP1 by round 6. Does it make sense to y'all yet? Is your fucking head spinning around? You're going, oh shit, this dude. Well, if you think what I'm talking about is confusing, go listen to some of these podcasts. They're well-meaning and they're great people, but they talk about shit that's way beyond fun to me. But I do like it. And again, remember, these guys are your analytics department. You are the general manager, and you are the manager. So you already have 2 damn jobs. That is the biggest value to tuning in to those analysts in fantasy baseball podcast world. You're not going to get a lot of that from me. What we're going to do is apply our analytics department information, and we're going to make decisions within that with our other factors. And again, remember, I'm a huge proponent of putting that human, watch it with your pass the eyeball test, because that's why we play these play fantasy sports, and in this case, fantasy baseball, is to stay in tune with the sport. I think there are people out there, honestly, that just play by basically the algorithms and the numbers and compete. That's their, I guess, their fun or their excitement about about playing fantasy sports, but I get very little joy out of that if I don't have a human element. Hey, like right here I am, BadAzz Fantasy Baseball behind me. Yes, and some of my baseball cards and old memorabilia behind you. It's behind me. That's the human element. It's putting your factors in that we talked about in those BadAzz sessions. It's putting that in there, putting your take into a strategy that's organized. So, so you're not just going into a draft and this time mock drafting. Do a lot of mock drafting. Do that backdrafting and get your tiers list together and then go practice that. Exercise your draft board, your war board, your whatever the hell you call it. Mine's a tiers list. I don't know what the hell else. If you got a cool name out there for my list, send it to me. I'll name it something else. But my tiers list, what I call it, is my draft. That's my board. That's my war board. When I go to the draft, I have that. The better that reflects my efforts at meeting whatever goals I have, the better, more predictable draft I'll have. And I think you will too. So do that backdrafting. Practice it. If you want to establish those positional lines to help give you a visual, or hold on here. To give you a visual, if you want to build in these color codes and stuff, these colored lines, then fine, do that. You can see I'm scrolling across my header here. These are my other factors. And again, you can hear more about that on BadAzz sessions that are on the web. The presentation slides are on the website at www.badazzsports.com. And also check us out on YouTube. But tomorrow night, at least at the time of filming this, on Sunday nights, we have our live stream at 7 p.m. Central Time. 7 p.m. Central Time on Sundays. So mark that on your calendar on Sunday nights and join me on the live stream where we'll be talking about a lot of the stuff in the news, how to get ready for your drafts. Remember, those drafts for season-long play are going to end. If you're going to get in before opening day, you only got 18 days. So I suggest you spend about a good week of mock drafting and solidify that list and validate that it's getting the results that you want. Practice in different draft positions. Get ready for your drafts. Speaking of drafts, if you want to join the BadAzz Fantasy Baseball Podcast League, go to our website. There's a link down there to register. Click on the link and join our team. We'll have a 12-team in the Yahoo platform, a 12-team standard categories head-to-head league. Looking forward to it. This will be our first time putting this together. We want people to join this that also are interested in sharing some of your experiences during the season with making moves, which means I can include you into our podcast community and come in here and share some of your ideas. Because I don't for a minute think that my ideas are the only ideas. They're Rudy's ideas. You have ideas out there too. I want to hear about them. I want to talk about them. I want to put them on this podcast because we're all striving to be badasses. So every day I want you to go at it the same way. Strive to be a badass in fantasy baseball. I'm looking forward to the ride. It's getting exciting, folks. Draft season is on us. Get ready. Get prepared. And for God's sake, get your asses off the chair. Check out Backdrafting. Check out BadAzz sessions. Check out the live stream. And let's go kick ass in your podcast or in your fantasy baseball league in 2023. Without further ado, thanks for joining in, listening in. My name is Rudy, host of the BadAzz Fantasy Baseball Podcast. And I'm out of here. Have a good day.